Sue. I'm the chair of the task force. I'm the chief housing inspector, Department of Building Inspection.
Jordan Davis, SRO tenant, she, her, hers.
Dion Roberts, Executive Director of Mary Elizabeth N.
Larry Kessler, Department of Public Health.
Sam Patel, SRO operator.
Peter Keith, Deputy City Attorney, Legal Advisor, and just, I need to leave at 9:30. I got
Okay.
a notice from the court that I need to be back at my desk by 9:45 this morning, it was yesterday, so I'm happy to provide legal advice till then.
Thank you.
Randall Sloan, tenant representative.
Clifford Gilmore, Central City SRO Collaborative.
Jennifer Chung Ju, Administrative Support.
All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. Jennifer's put together the meetings from last month, the minutes from last month. Please take a minute to look at those. Yep. Any comments on the minutes?
I did see something. Alright. I actually did, under public comments for bylaws, Christopher Micah was listed there. I believe he was testifying on the SRO rent subsidies issue. It said public comment member.
So it's probably not under bylaws, but under SRO
No.
rent subsidies. Okay, so why don't we
I'm sorry.
move an arrow down? He should be
Okay.
listed down there.
I see.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yes, I don't see in the minutes, unless I'm overlooking it, comment I made at the last meeting regarding updating our task force roster.
I mean, as a future meeting topic?
No, just as, on our website, we still have, I think, old members listed, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I
So,
was referring to.
yeah, he's asking us to make a
Okay.
correction of
Yeah.
that. Okay, yes,
Got it?
okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion that the minutes submitted be approved.
Clifford Gilmore, is there a second? Sam Patel, all those in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. I just have a couple of announcements. The guest speaker that we had, Joanna Fraguli, I believe has passed away. So people are interested in reaching out in some way. She was at the Mayor's Office of Disability, but I don't have any details on it.
I think I remember I was in Sacramento at the time when I was with the Housing Rights Committee on a tenants' rights thing, and someone said, Joanna, I think this was back in May.
Yeah, so it's been about a month or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she really helped us when she came and made that presentation. The issues of having pets in SROs. She was incredibly well versed in the law and all the policies, and some sad news. Last time I passed around a photo from a hotel in the Mission where we've been having a lot of problems. Department of Building Inspection does work very closely with a number of community organizations to find some of the worst problem spots where living conditions are poor. The department cites over 10,000 violations every year, gets 88% corrected every year. It's a very busy task. I seem a little distracted sometimes. That's why. Are there, so that's all I'm gonna say for the announcements today. Any discussion on that? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's very sad that I think we should, if we can, I don't know if advisory bodies can do this, but adjourn this meeting in our memory, like after we get done with our agenda.
Sounds like a good idea.
And also, as another housekeeping, as some of you may know, I am currently 14 days into a hunger strike for rent relief for like about 2,500 tenants. I don't want to discuss it too much here, but if I seem like very like woozy or if I have to leave, there's a chance like I have to really take care of my health right now.
Well, we think your health is very important,
Yeah.
and support you in maintaining that. Any comments? Okay. Let's go to the bylaws. We've been discussing the bylaws many times. We introduced last time two alternatives that we were talking about. So we have the bylaws here, and we have the single page here. Yeah, that's it. Everybody have this page? It's after the bylaws, I think.
Yeah.
So we're looking at having two votes this morning, as we introduced it last time. Everybody see that? Okay, are there any comments or discussion on the bylaws?
So I just wanted to offer, just from a legal standpoint, I wanted to explain what the two options are that are being
Okay.
presented. I consulted with our experts on meeting rules and the Brown Act and the Charter, and for a body like this, basically there's 2 points I want to make and advise the body about. For a body like this, we must have a quorum to act. A quorum means a majority of the full membership as well. So we can't do anything unless we have 7 people, 7 members in the room. That's a non-negotiable thing, and that's not one of the changes here, but I just wanted to give that by way of background. I mean, the bylaws reflect that, as they should, but then voting is a different issue. The nature of the body that this is, since we don't actually pass binding laws on the city, but we're really an advisory body, we have the option of being able to adopt our resolutions with less than a majority of the full body. If we were the Board of Supervisors, we'd have to always have a majority of the full body. But we're an advisory body, so that's not legally required. We can choose to require a majority of the body to adopt a measure, but it's not absolutely required. But the minimum number of people who we can have to adopt a measure is a majority of the members present. So say we have 7 people present, we would need to have, we have the option saying, well, a measure could be adopted if 4 people vote in favor of it.
Yeah.
So basically, again, the baseline number to do anything is 7, and then we have the option, if we want to actually adopt a measure, to require 7, but we can never go below 4.
Right.
In terms of what we would require. So it always has to be a majority of a quorum to adopt a measure. So if people were abstaining, say we had 7 people present, 2 people abstained, 3 voted yes, 2 voted no, the measure wouldn't pass, because you always have to have at least a majority of a quorum to adopt a measure. So that's the law of how, that's kind of the background here, but we have that, those are the options.
All right, thank you very much. So we have the 2 votes that we introduced last time. Any other comments on the bylaws? Do I hear a motion to adopt the bylaws as introduced?
And that would be requiring 7 to pass a measure.
That's right.
If this passes, can we also do vote 2?
We are going to do both.
Yeah.
That's what we said last time. Do I hear a motion to adopt the bylaws?
I make the motion.
Sam Patel, do I have a second?
I second it.
RJ. Any discussion? Peter, do I take public comment at the end of the item or before we vote?
I think it has to be before we vote.
Is there any
There should
public
be
comment?
discussion. If there's going to be discussion about it, that should occur now.
I don't see any public comment. Okay. All those in favor of adopting the bylaws? Unanimous. Congratulations.
Wow.
We've been trying to do that for a while. Okay. Let's talk about vote number 2, and the difference here is that it lowers the threshold from 7 to majority of the members present, as Peter just explained. Any discussion on this vote number 2?
And just to be clear, if this measure carried, it would essentially be an amendment of the bylaws.
That's
that we
right.
just adopted.
That's right. Thank you very much for the clarification. Any discussion? Any public comment? Do I have a motion for vote number 2? Would anyone like to make a motion for members present?
I'll make it.
Jordan Davis, is there a second?
Second.
Dion Roberts. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Wow. I am amazed. Almost speechless. If I wasn't the chair, I would be speechless.
Jamie, I like to commend you on all the work you do with the
Yeah,
bylaws. I know you've done a lot of work.
I understand, absolutely.
Thank you, thank you. Been a long road. Okay. Item number 6 is SRO rent subsidies. We've talked about this a couple of times, and before we get started with the discussion, I'd just like to say that people here have been very thoughtful. It's an amazing concept. People have been very thoughtful about raising possible problems that could have come up with the details in implementing this sort of a change. And I want to commend everybody for their input and their thoughtful ideas. Is there any discussion? Why don't we let Jordan introduce the topic?
Well, this has been before the task force for, 3 months now? Probably 4 times already. And I don't know, it's just really, this is something that has been on my mind for a really, really long time. And I've been working really, really hard to do the necessary community input. And sorry if I seem to fade out, but it's very, but this is too close to my heart. And when all else failed, I of course went on my hunger strike. I didn't want to have to do it, but I did it. But I am amazed at the amount of community support for this. With that said, let's consider this resolution is only advisory. This resolution also is basically to start a process. I mean, whatever technical details we need to do, and I'm willing to accept anything, we'll do it, but it's not within the scope of this resolution. This only opens up a process. And number 2, I want this to be a win-win-win for everybody, from property owner to nonprofit to SRO collaborative to tenants. And believe me, the tenants and THC has given me a lot of support over this. And I just want to pass this out. I want this recommendation to go, and I want people to know the importance of this. And I would not be and I tend to pick and choose my battles, and I don't go on hunger strikes often, and I wish I had a vegan burger to eat right now, but come on, this is a no-brainer. We can move this through. We can address any issues that come up. This just opens up the process, and whatever technical things we can do, not within scope, we can work it out in other contexts.
What you're saying is that I think that there's going to be a process still to come. If,
I mean, I'm sure there's gonna need to be like a lot of work to be done to implement it, and that's why I included like actually didn't give the updated resolution. It actually said supporting the 7.5 million asked from Matt Haney's office. I don't know if you got that yesterday. I sent it kind of late.
so Supervisor Haney put money in the budget.
He's making a budget request
Making
for
a budget request.
$7.5 million. And
Would there be a hearing about this before it's implemented?
well, you can go to the all-day budget hearing on the 24th.
Margot?
We anticipate that that is going to come up in the budget hearing today.
Today?
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like as part of the budget hearing. It's not the.
It's not a separate item?
It's not a separate item, but we anticipate
Okay.
it to be on there.
Any other things you want to add, Margot?
Well, I mean, I think the department has said that already, which is, the hard 30% of, income in a rent level is a reason why that exists. Historically, that's just not how it's been funded for many different reasons. There's a cap legislation, there is that, DPH units were paid, the rent was different than the old master lease units. I do want to say that all the new master lease units we're bringing on, they're all at 30%.
Really?
And yeah, because, that's really how it should be, and we are able to ask for the budget when we do a new project. Many of them are also funded by the COC, and that's HUD.
By the who?
Continuum of Care, which
Ah.
is part of HUD, and that's 30%. So, I don't think there is an argument about right or wrong. I think that, there is the fact that it will take a certain amount of money, and that unless the money is put up, it's going to be very difficult to do what the mayor and the board want us to do, which is every dollar that they give us right now for housing is in order to bring on new housing, and not, to substitute rents to a level that, would really meet equity. But there is a supervisor who's asking for additional funding. Now, we can't act on possible funding, obviously, but I hope, I can't really vote on this item, but I hope it's clear what the department is
Can I just ask,
supporting.
when the mayor says every new dollar is for new housing, who is that housing intended for?
Oh, it's all housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. So that's the dollars that I mean. So the money that's, like the ERAF money, for example, is for 300 new master lease units. So there, as Jordan has been advocating for, there has to be additional money to do this, unless the payoff is to bring on less units. And I don't think that, given the homeless crisis, that is something that, those that get to make those decisions, because it's not us, we report to the mayor, it's not something that I doubt that anyone would make that decision given the homeless crisis and the recent point in time increases. And, that's been the issue.
Okay.
And when the homeless department was founded, the money that came was from the legacy departments. Whatever monies they had already in their budget, there was an additional budget given in order to, address equity issues or anything like that. So it's not a lack of willingness or lack of understanding or lack of, supporting equity. It's, people have to advocate for the money, and Jordan is showing how that is done.
Well, and when you said like we need a new funding commitment, well, I'm giving you all the opportunity.
I think I'm acknowledging that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other comments on the SRO?
Yes, Clifford Goodman for the record. At our last meeting, I recall there was, really good fluid discussion around this item, and I know, if I recall, I think Dion, you raised a question about, for master lease, operators, the reduction in rent receipts would be an issue. And I just want to also say that THC, or that's a collaborative, was part of the Tenant Housing Clinic. We have 13 of our buildings that tenants run monthly meetings in. And so we made this an agenda item through our tenant organizers to facilitate this discussion. And so that average is anywhere from 800 to 1,000 tenants of those 13 hotels per month. And knowing that this has been in discussion, it's still in discussion, there just hasn't been a groundswell coming out of those meetings from our tenants in our buildings. And our leadership has 35 people in it that meet monthly, and we've discussed this. But from even our leadership, there hasn't been a real groundswell in the push to say, listen, this is something that SRO Collaborative needs to get behind and needs to do. So with that said, I also want to just mention that our executive director, Randy Shaw, was interviewed by the SF Examiner this week on this very same issue. And for THC, our highest priority is the care of and support for tenants in supportive housing. Part of that includes having staff who are unionized staff be able to be compensated at a level where there's an incentive to stay, because this is very difficult work, it's challenging work, and there at times there's shortages of staff. And so THC's highest priority is the care of tenants, and that's exactly what Randy Shaw is talking about. Also, he's talking about the fact that in the budget of the 2019-2020 budget, that the allocation still falls millions of dollars short. So from that perspective, I just wanted to add that in. And then lastly, I still feel that this, in my view, we could still explore, discuss maybe some additional options. Some of our tenants have said, listen, you know, I don't have access to as much quality food as I would like to have. So, you know, maybe I can go to the local store and I can have an account, or I can get some grooming subsidies and things. So I think there's other things that could be considered around subsidy other than necessarily, you know, the cash reduction. And we all know sort of from administration to administration how the Cash Not Care program has been struggling to meet its goals over the past years.
More comments? More discussion? Larry?
Larry Kessler, Department of Public Health. I think in supporting something like this from a public health perspective, I think it's clear there's positive public health outcomes with doing this. Our concern also is similar to the HSH concern about where this money would be coming from. Is it taking away from something else, or what other outcomes are being jeopardized by moving this money into this type of program? So I think, you know, we would support something like this knowing that where the money was coming from wasn't going to be taking away from something that also may be impacting in a significant way other public health issues.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, just in reading, you know, verbatim what the resolution, what the proposal is asking, it's asking the task force to ask the Board of Supervisors to collaborate with HSH to examine and reevaluate this tenant rent structure. So it's asking these two groups to get together and examine it and reevaluate it. And I want to say that I suppose I am not opposed to that. That was one of the very first comments I made, that we cannot, I don't think it was, I would not be in favor of asking the Board of Supervisors to just flat out, you know, make a motion or move that tenants start paying only 30% of their income. But I am in favor of engaging in the conversation. It's a fair request. This legislation has been around forever, and I'm speaking on behalf of an organization. We have one building that is 30% of income. and we have another building that is in compliance with the CAP, Care Not Care, Care Not Cash program, you know, and at the same time, you know, we survive. Our program functions based on grants that we get from the city, and it's based on what we tell them our expenses are less what the tenants pay. So the city expects us to collect rent and to collect rent at a certain amount. The city does not fund dollar for dollar, and even the city requests that we diversify our revenue. We're supposed to get rent and other donations and other proceeds to fund these programs. So we're already, I mean, the city already has not committed to funding the projects at 100%, you know, and so we need the rental income, the tenant portion of rent. But I think I can make this same point if, you know, if we were to have this type of discussion. So what I'm saying is, you know, I don't see anything wrong with the proposal as it is, and that is that we first engage in conversation. It's what we're all saying here. HSH can't make this decision, you know, unless they know they're gonna get the money to do it, so.
Thank you. Other comments?
I think this conversation can happen a lot quicker than we all think, and I just want to make sure that the money is there. Secondly, I saw what Randy Shaw said, and frankly, it's a little offensive to pit the workers at THC, who I have a lot of sympathy for. My father, who just passed away last month, was a union person, and THC staff are unionized, and I will never cross a picket line, except if it's like police or public safety unions, but that's another story. But I will say that that's kind of like, I really think that I have a lot of like sympathy for the staff, and the staff have a lot of sympathy for me, and they're really, and from what I'm talking with rank and file tenants, they're really supportive. And I must also point out that that a lot of THC tenants, a lot of people and tenant leaders are getting that rent reduction, so maybe that's affecting sort of the urgency.
Now, you said earlier that you felt you were getting a lot of support from THC.
From like tenants have been like supportive, a lot of the staffers have been supportive, a lot of people have like reached out to me, and I even got a wellness check because of when the Hoodline article came out. But it's just, look, our budget is $12.6 billion with a B. That's a lot of money coming into the city. This is a very small fraction of the budget, and we can find this somehow. We need to grow the pie. We can't like go on scarcity, and we can't fight for crumbs. And it's my philosophy. And there's just a lot of I'm sure like, it's kind of the equivalent of finding money under the couch. Trust me, like cities do this all the time. They always manage to find the money where there's will.
Okay. Other comments, Dion?
One more comment, just, and I would ask Marlo to correct me if I'm wrong, but the statement that the budget is $12 billion, I believe Jeff Kaczynski has even said that more than 50% of the budget goes towards maintaining housing, the current housing programs.
Well, that is our budget. That's not in the billions. So that is our budget. Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
so I just want to
Yeah,
make it
yeah.
clear
In
then
terms of
that
our
the
budget,
housing and
yeah.
homeless budget,
Yeah.
more than 50% of it is currently paying for existing housing.
Margot,
Yep.
for HSH for the record. Well, and that is one of those things that we try to explain to every person on the street all the time who say, all this money is being spent on homelessness. You know, a lot of it, more than 50%, is actually spent on maintaining, stabilizing and maintaining the housing that has already been created due to the, progressiveness and, quite frankly, humanity and what's right in the city. Now, there's still a lot of people out there. And again, I'm not speaking for or against. It just every new, the new money that we get is for new housing or new navigation centers, or to increase the contracts that we already have, because the cost of the providers go up all the time, and the city usually just gives like a 2 or 2.5% cost of doing
COD.
business increase, and that's, so we have to think about people out on the street, the people in our housing, our providers, and everybody who lives in San Francisco. So I think in terms of the legislation, we had discussed some amendments to make it less of a request specifically for money and more of a request of change in policy. I don't see that on here because the request is still here, but that's, I'm just pointing that out.
Okay.
That was something that people here talked about.
Other comments? Yeah, RJ.
I agree with you in terms of the exact verbiage of this. And I don't wanna interfere with the spirit of what Jordan is attempting here. But I agree that it does say that the Board of Supervisors, in collaboration with the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, do, one, examine and reevaluate the tenant portion of rent. Okay, so that takes some time for those two bodies to do. Examine and reevaluate. That takes meeting after meeting after vote, etc. And to provide funding. So, again, I don't want to interfere with the spirit of what Jordan is doing, but that be it resolved portion there, that looks like 4 to 6 months of work to get to the $7.5 million budget increase, to be honest with you. To be realistic about how things work in meeting after collaboration between bodies, etc. Honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other comments? I'm just going to say that I'm going to support the resolution. I have trust in the Board of Supervisors that they will do the right thing, and the mayor's office and the department. So, we have a member that's put a lot into this proposal, and people have offered their expert testimony the last couple of months, and there's been a lot of good things that have been added into this process, a lot of the caveats and a lot of the things, the risks and to look for. And that's what this body is for, is to look at the details too. So, is there any other comment?
Yeah, it's, but like you said, like it could take like 4 to 6 months, but like then of course, like once that like process is complete, then like we have to wait for the next budget cycle to get this in. So like we might just maybe want to get it in, make sure it's like allocated right now, so that way we can get a head start. Like maybe begin like not have to wait another year, because I'm sick of waiting.
You're putting them in the budget, so that's getting a good head start.
Yeah.
Okay, any other, yeah.
It really seems like perhaps this should be slightly amended, because this really seems like the $7.5 million ask period. This examining and reevaluating between two bodies in the city is, again, that's 4 to 6 months. That's it doesn't have to do with that's not a budget ask right there. That's time and conversation and back and forth and meeting minutes, etc. So perhaps this really needs to be amended.
Do you have a comment? Or should we go to Margot? Margot first.
Margot Antonetti, HSH, for the record. I really appreciate you understanding and being realistic about the budget process. I do think that there's actually already a lot of work being done around it. I will be making an amendment to this even when we're voting on it, and that is just really in terms of saying that this has to be allocated, because it's on one hand asking to examine and reevaluate, on the other hand it's making an assumption about what that examination and evaluation will result in. I do think it will result in it, I just don't think that we can put in a resolution an assumption, and I think, again, I don't think there's anyone who in spirit would not, support equity amongst our SRO buildings and our other buildings, and quite frankly, all of San Francisco, but we don't have control over that. So I appreciate your realism. I do think that when things get pushed, they happen faster.
Sam Patel for the record. A question, actually, I'm not sure who this is directed to, but $7.5 million is not gonna cut it. If you're gonna go down to reducing everybody's rent to 30%. I mean, I just did a quick math, and, on the average, if somebody's paying $400 and their income is $600, it goes down to like $200. That's $400 delta. How many tenants are we talking about that will subsidize the $7.5 million?
This is directed toward the calculation was based on based on a sunshine request I made to the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. It's the master lease. It wouldn't be all SRO. Sadly, it wouldn't be all SRO tenants.
I get it, but how many SRO units are master leased at this time?
I think about 2,500 to 3,000.
It's a lot more than that.
It's actually 35, I'm sorry. I know I don't know that all the new buildings were in it. I think there is the issue of what is already at 30% and what isn't.
Yeah.
But, that would really mean just a really good budget evaluation, and, I don't know if the amount, that's the thing about talking about this in terms of money, that then we start voting on money.
No, one of the things is I'm in a unique position in the sense that I do manage two nonprofits, so I know what the rent structure there is. And I do manage a for-profit building also. So I could tell you that the $7.5 million ain't gonna cut it. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. You're talking about close to $20 million.
Well, Larry?
Larry Kessler, Public Health. I'm wondering, as HSH moves into funding, not just, or getting involved, this is focused on people living in hotels, and I'm wondering, as maybe the supportive housing part of it, or just more of an apartment dwelling unit type of construction, or maybe if you get into that type of housing, would this make a difference, that this is only focusing on people living in hotels instead of the other types of housing units that, yeah.
Yeah, Margaret, for the record. If you're talking about equity, it should be all of permanent supportive housing. Again, new construction
Yeah.
is 30% now, new master leases is 30%, and everything that's funded by the feds is at 30%. But yeah, there are some that are still at a higher rent level because it hasn't been adjusted, because there hasn't been the budget for it. So if you wanted to make an amendment to talk about that, then you can see whether or not that amendment gets accepted. But those are not cash, and I think that's one of the reasons there is some of that inequity.
So Sam and then RJ.
This question probably pertains more to Margo. What happens to the tenants who, let's say you master lease a building and there are existing tenants in the building? What happens to their rents?
I think that would have to be discussed, and I think that's, I don't know that we can make assumptions about future buildings anyway.
No, but there are.
You're asking very good budgetary and fiscal questions that I'm not able to answer at this moment in time.
No, I understand, but there are
Yeah.
existing buildings
Yeah,
that have the same concept, where our tenants living in those
Yeah.
buildings who are on their own, they do their own, they're on their own, they're working and doing theirs, so that's what I'm saying, is this number doesn't really jive too well because of that.
I'm actually looking.
Okay, so we're gonna go to RJ and then Jordan.
Okay, Randall Sloan, tenant representative. Given what Mr. Patel has brought up, there hasn't been a formal evaluation of the number of tenants to be impacted, positively impacted, the number of landlords to be impacted, and therefore a realistic amount of money to ask for.
We had a little bit of this
Nowhere
discussion.
have I seen that.
I think there was one meeting that you weren't here, I think.
Oh, okay.
We did have some discussion about.
A discussion. I don't see anything in writing or, a more formal sort of impact statement, and therefore a realistic assessment of the ask for the Board of Supervisors.
I want to point out that the 7.5 million that one, it's restricted to the master lease universe, and which includes THC and a few other nonprofits. Two, it's basically on top of what we're currently funding right now. So what's happening is that money is based on like the difference between what THC tenants are what tenants are paying right now and what they would be paying if it was 30%, which this is like based on differentials, and of course I disregarded like all the hotels on the list that are at 30% because they're already at the point, but it is like it's usually around SSI is a good measure, like between 196 and 221.
Okay, I get that, Jordan, because you brought that up multiple times. That assessment and ask is all in your head right now. It is not on paper yet, and it needs to be on paper. There's too many bodies. There's tenants, there's landlords, there's the city for the budget, and it's all in Jordan's head right now.
So hold on, time out.
Okay,
Hold on.
This
Let me ask something. Margot, you have we had a meeting, and we were asking, we need the details and the breakdown of what the $7.5 million was.
That's right.
And Jordan and Margot have been working on this back and forth.
Good.
We haven't gotten a document. And you're going before the board today.
People are in front of the board in 10 minutes. I mean, that's when the budget hearing starts. That
starting.
doesn't mean that's when, and we, we are doing estimates at the
Have you submitted any
board.
paperwork on with figures about this proposal, or
Well, we have
to
done.
Supervisor Haney?
Yeah, we have done back of the envelope because it's really, really involved to try and figure that all out. I hear that Jordan has, done a pretty intensive job around it. We can only estimate at this point, and,
Okay,
and
so-
I think there's already an amount of money on the table. So, again, the department is not against it, we just need to have it fully funded.
Other comments?
Clifford Gilmore for the
Yeah.
record. I just wanted to go back to what our tenant leadership has said a couple months ago. Would people like to have the additional subsidy, the extra money? Absolutely, yes. No one would object to that. Of course, they would want that. But they also sort of cautioning us about what would be unintended consequences. And so I asked them, so what does that look like? And they said, well, people in my building have an extra money. They don't have the financial means to balance or the acumen to have the extra money and to know exactly, that to take care of the responsibilities, or would that become an issue? So I'm just saying, I don't know if we've even explored unintended consequences, or if there are any in the future, then what happens is that be with the board or something. Because one of the things I think we have to consider is the real human living of our tenants in SRO hotels, and what the real realities and struggles and challenges that they have. And so that being the case, have we addressed that part of it? And if we feel comfortable that we have, then fine. As I said, having extra means to live on is something that everybody needs. But I do think there's that other real life, ongoing life experience or challenges that I don't think can be folded into dollars and cents.
Okay, thank you. I want to point out that the resolution also states that we don't want this to compete with other budget priorities.
Other social justice oriented budget priorities.
Okay, so I think we should try to move the discussion a little bit toward either voting on this or voting on something that's amended, or I don't know, Jordan, if you want to entertain amendments or whether you just want to have a vote on this first, or you know, we're entertaining motions right now. Anyone wants to make a motion?
Point of order, is it time for public comments yet?
Well, I was going to take the motion first and then take the public comment. We could take public comment first. Let's do that.
All right.
Chris, you got anything to add? Help us out here.
This conversation is incredibly hard to sit through as a person who is basically newly disabled, and because of that disability became homeless and is now living in SROs at a level of poverty that I don't know how to imagine myself to get out of. There's also some strange dynamics at work here. I'm sorry, I'm upset. I think is what's going on. I'm like upset at this conversation. I guess like the last comment about the unintended consequences of giving SRO tenants a little extra income is absurd to me. I mean, I realize people have drug problems and stuff, but this is a basic amount of money that people need to live. I mean, I said this at the last public comment. I am in the midst of a monthly economic crisis with what I'm left over after the little bit of what I get goes to my rent. You know, there's not much left over. I mean, we live in a city of just extensive riches. I'm not sure there has ever been a city as wealthy as San Francisco or the Bay Area in history. And I don't understand the argument that we should leave disabled and chronically ill people without income. Hello. Without legitimate income. Anyway, this is upsetting. This is upsetting. This is a recommendation, right? The Board of Supervisors, City Hall, will work out the budget. There's a $7.5 million budget ask. If that's not enough, they'll work it out. The recommendation, like it says right here, no extra cost burden should be placed on hotel owners or operators or nonprofit housing providers, nor should allocating these funds compete with any budget ask that advances social and economic justice. What's the problem? Why are you here? Who are you defending? I have so much to say. I could write a little essay about this conversation, right? I can't get it all out right now. I tried to take some notes. I don't know. I'll end with what I said last time. You are compelled to support this, right? The fact that you're arguing about it in this way is kind of absurd. The Democratic Party, you know, who I feel like I'm enemies with some of those people, they all supported it. And I want to say en masse. What's the word? Unanimously, right? Nancy Pelosi, Scott Wiener, all those people. They supported it. You need to take a vote on this right now, pass it, and send it to the Board of Supervisors so that we can work on it and make it a functional piece of legislation.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Who's next? Anybody? Yep. Please state your name.
Chester Zemany, I'm a tenant in SRO, just recently. And I just am thinking about the context right now, the citywide context. I read, I think a week or two ago, that this is the most expensive real estate market in the whole world right now. The whole world. And also, I've dealt with THC before, and in my mind, I would give them, they deserve kind of a benefit of the doubt just because of the professionalism and the experience that I think they bring to the table. I wouldn't underestimate THC, and so that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Yes.
My name is Francesca Manning. I'm a tenant, not in the SRO. I have family members and dear friends in both Section 8 housing and in nonprofit-run housing here, and they take 30% of their income for where they live. And the mere idea that they would have to pay more on nothing that they receive is horrifying. And the fact that so many people are currently doing that in the city is a disgrace, and I think it would be something amazing for this board to unanimously support this measure and get it as quickly as possible to remedy this horrible mistake that has been made in the way that we run housing for people who really need it. So I'm here to just support this proposition and thank all of you who are going to vote for it.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll entertain amendments.
Okay, so Jordan, so why don't you, would anybody like to add amendments to this current resolution? Yeah.
I don't know if I have an exact wording for an amendment, but I'd like to see a step here which assesses the realistic ask. Is it 7.5 or is it 20? And I'm not putting a value judgment on either amount, but what if it's really 18 million we need for this to happen? I don't want that to be a shock to the Board of Supervisors and the HSAs.
So RJ, so if you wanted to add some language to, I think we're talking about the first sentence here, right? Be it resolved. Everybody likes examine and reevaluate the tenant portion of rent and to provide funding in this year's subsequent year's budget. So what you're talking about is the words provide funding. Do you want to add language around that phrase?
To assess the realistic ask, a step to assess the realistic ask.
So
here.
how about if you say portion of rent and realistically assess
Citywide.
Citywide
Citywide cost.
The
here.
scope here is for master leased housing.
Yeah.
Basically, right?
Yes.
So citywide would be a little bit too broad.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So provide, and to, sorry for all the people in the public comment, but this is how we have to do it, right?
Group things, yeah.
The tenant portion of rent and make a realistic assessment as to the cost before providing funding? How does that sound? In order to.
No.
The public also has good ideas. How about that? In order to provide funding?
Yes.
Okay. So let's make that change. So we have after rent
Yeah, right here.
and realistically assess the cost in order to provide funding. Any comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make it.
So moved. Jordan Davis, is there a second? We have a second? Do we have a second?
Do you mind reading it back again?
I
What you have?
Okay, so we're going to have, we start examine and reevaluate the tenant portion of rent and to realistically assess the cost in order to provide funding.
I wouldn't use the word "and" here because that's. I'm going to be very British here and say maybe whilst. WHILST. So
it's happening at the same simultaneously?
Yeah.
Wow.
So you're not adding time
Yeah, no,
to the
that's
process.
That's a great word.
Wilt?
WHILST.
ST, yeah.
And that would be realistically assessing.
Wilkes realistically assessing.
Assessing.
Huh?
And if I may, so
Mhm.
what we want the outcome of this to be, and I'm talking about after there's been this collaboration,
Mhm.
we want, or are we asking them to then determine what impact that will
Well,
have?
the second part of the resolution says that no extra cost burden should be placed on the hotel owners or operators, nor should the funds compete with other budget asks. You know, we may not have a unanimous vote, but everybody has their own viewpoint, right? People are representing different segments of our community and have to really speak from those segments, and that's their responsibility. Jordan has accepted this amendment. There's a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
R.J. Sloan seconds the amendment. Okay, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I have to abstain.
You're abstaining, one
because-
abstention?
But I have to.
All those
so-
opposed? 1, 2, 3. Motion carries 4-3 with 1 abstention.
I am.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for their comments and inputs. Item number 7 is prioritization of future meeting topics.
Okay.
Now, I've been working with the Food Security Network. The person who spoke with us a couple meetings ago is named Axe. She,
Abe.
yeah,
Abe Lambert.
Abe, sorry. She has changed jobs or something, but she still works kind of with them. Yeah,
So the Food Security Task Force is somewhat like this body.
okay.
Which is that people are seated on it.
Right, okay.
And so that hasn't changed.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. She has a different email address.
Yes, 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 yes.
So I
yes,
lost
yes,
contact
yeah,
with
yeah.
her.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She was
and-
at Quesana.
And Jennifer had the email address and she was out for a little while. And
Yeah,
we also
okay.
want to extend our best wishes to Jennifer's family.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're trying to get them confirmed for the next meeting. It's not official yet, still trying. We reached out to Trans Home also, they were busy this month. Do people see their items on this list?
Well, so food security is confirmed for July, like,
It's
but if,
50% confirmed.
but we can definitely like have two,
We
more
probably could
topics
have
in
two
meetings,
topics.
like, so, maybe we could try for, adult protective, services, next, because that's kind of been a lot, and like, it's something, it's not gonna take away from anything.
Who is our best bet to line somebody up from APS? Margot, okay. Can you work on
Working
that?
with them on a new initiative.
Oh, great. Okay, is there any objection to trying to put that on for next time? Okay, so we'll try to go with those two for July. Margot will be be responsible for reaching out to APS.
Or you could do APS for September, like, if we're gonna have, like, departmental guests, we should probably have one per, month, just so, yeah.
Well, we may not get both of them, so I think we should just shoot for,
And,
we go for 2, we might get 1.
Food Security Task Force is not a departmental.
but like, or departmental, or like another, like, government group that does presentations. but,
My suggestion would be we may not get, we probably won't get both. Maybe we should try for one of these two for next time. And then, do people see other topics they want to have? Okay.
And
Yeah.
also Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, which has already been passed and been signed, but there's implementation.
Is that Ian Fregosi?
Ian Fregosi, so you should, probably it's best if you coordinate because you're the chair.
Yeah, so we were talking about, I was talking with him about either September or October. That work for people? Okay. Okay. Other topics?
And this might be more of a housekeeping, but I think we should also have legislative updates, like as a standing item for our meeting, because a lot of legislation comes out sometimes, and yeah, and we should definitely, like, mention
Any objection to that? Okay, we put that on. What we're also doing is, we forgot to put it on this time, is under item 8, we are adding city agencies. So we'll have that next time, but we don't have it today. And let's just give the agencies an opportunity to tell us what's new. Okay. Anything else? Any discussion? Yeah.
Jennifer, I just want to confirm the dates for the next meetings with you, because I'm writing to Achilles.
Yeah, next day will be July 18th,
Uh-huh.
9 a.m., the same room,
Yeah.
this one, 528.
Oh, yeah, we'll let them know. We'll let them know the room later, and then 8:15, right, in August?
August, we actually gonna have a.
We're gonna have a recess.
Oh, okay.
August recess.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the fall, we'll be back in our regular room, but next time we'll be in this room.
Yeah, I would connect him with you if I come to
Yes.
that.
Yes.
I appreciate that, Margot. Thank you.
So question in the fall, does that mean September we'll be back in our normal room?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Item number 7. Public comment on item number 7? Okay. Item 8. The SRO collaboratives. The Mission SRO Collaborative has changed some staff members there. And there's a new program director who I'm very excited about, Anna, who has a long background at Kazahusta Just Cause, and she brings to the Mission Collaborative somebody that understands tenant-landlord case work. And the Mission Collaborative hasn't had somebody that ever in charge of Ms. Rock. So very excited to have her aboard. They're not here today. But if you're familiar with Kazahusta Just Cause, they are very tenacious and meticulous. They've been representing the Latino community for many, many years and doing an excellent job at it. They speak with a lot of monolingual Spanish people in the mission, and so that's where Anna's from. She's bringing that to Mission SRO Collaborative and Dolores Street's Community Services, so very hopeful on that front. Cliff, is there anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, Cliff McKinnon for the record. So there's one thing I wanted to share with this body and the public at large, and that is that, I mean, this happens from time to time, but so the Auburn Hotel on 6th Street, which is run by Episcopal Services.
481 Main Street?
No, I don't think it's 481, but anyway, it's on 6th Street.
I think that's the Manali.
Yeah.
On Minna Street, Auburn is on Minna Street.
Oh, it's on Minna, okay. So.
I've been there too many times.
Yeah.
Before they took it over.
Yeah.
That's right. I haven't had to go back since. Thank you.
So, it's one of the situations where these buildings have old elevators, and this is actually an ongoing issue with the Auburn Hotel. And the elevator's been out for a while and is projected to be out probably until sometime next year. Although the staff and it is doing a great job in terms of doing outreach and trying to provide relocation and services for the tenants there. But the projection cost of it is going to be upwards over $500,000 just for the repairs. So.
Are they updating the elevator?
No, well, I was told they're doing the necessary repairs, not necessarily upgrading the elevator. And that, so I've been working with Matt Haney's office on this, and one of the things that we're trying to do with the staff is to work with the owner, because I understand the city is going to ask in terms of subsidies to RFPs from the owner, and that has yet to be submitted by the owner, but hopefully real soon that will be submitted so that they can actually begin the long road of putting the elevator back online.
You want to talk about the Bristol?
Well, the Bristol Hotel was a privately run hotel, but now it is actually a step-up hotel, and a number of tenants have applied for it and have been accepted. So, but I think the target date for people to move in has to sort of keep moving because of the elevator and other minor things that they are trying to finalize. So I think maybe in August that people will actually begin to move in, and I think that building will also be 30% of people's income.
And one thing that's very significant about that building was that there was a New York Times article that came out, I think either last year or the year before, and one of these startup tech, it was going to be a hotel for startup tech people, and there was a big outcry. And now it's going to open next month, maybe next week,
hopefully,
as step-up housing.
As step-up housing, which is desperately needed.
So that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Margo?
And paid for the first 5 years by Salesforce.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Oh, the Bristol.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion, comment, public comment?
Just,
Yeah.
yeah, the elevator thing, really hits home for me, and
Yeah.
just everything Clifford said does really hit home, and it makes me also think about, how we know this, we need, how much we need to also focus on, making sure seniors and disabled don't have to live in SROs. It's even in the legislation that families, but seniors and disabled, that's going to be a big issue, and
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not going to say any more about tech because that would result in a lot of foul language.
All right. Do we have any general public comments on today's meeting? These two gentlemen are spending the summer working with my division. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Lucas, I go to Secret Cathedral. Marcus Wong, I just graduated from Mills High School.
Welcome.
Welcome.
You learned all about, you got a good crash course in government.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? And we're adjourning to the memory of Joanna Fraguli.
And I
Larry
also
Kramer,
forgot to
seconded
adjourn.
by Margo.
I also forgot to adjourn in memory of Jeff Adachi a few months ago, so let's do this late thing.
Okay, well, that him too. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. This is
take forever. On the VM. It's actually copying your file now. It's not only that instead of it. One pay, one make yeah, slightly different. I mean, it's just a little bit convenient with the file. So don't forget, like I said, we're grabbing from the gas. There's no avoiding it. It's just a physical make on the device. And that thing might not be 10 gig, it might be going to 1 gig. There's no way we can avoid it. So, hold off again? You should test it from directly from VM to VM, not from NAS. A copy a huge file, like a 10 gig file from the VM directly